Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm Laura Barth, the Research Coordinator with the American Floral Endowment. Today, I'm joined by two outstanding researchers and longtime collaborators with AFE, Dr. Michelle Jones from The Ohio State University and Dr. John Dole from North Carolina State University. Both have received AFE funding and have a wealth of experience when it comes to crafting successful research proposals. Today, they'll be sharing practical tips, insights, and lessons they've learned that can help your proposal stand out. Let's jump in. So, to start things off, my first question to both of you is, what do you think makes a research proposal stand out to our reviewers? Are there any key elements that you always try to prioritize?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Um, I guess I would just kind of remind everyone reviewing the AFE research priorities is really important because you've already gone out and asked the industry what they're most interested in. So one of the biggest things to remember with American Floral Endowment funding is that you have to be right on track with what's important for the industry, and you have to make sure that you explain that well and justify that well. So that's one of the things over the years I've found is key. And each year things change. And even within the research priorities, sometimes there are good projects that get funded that are beyond those in a way that maybe someone hadn't anticipated. So it's important to also interact with your industry groups and find out what they're interested in.
I agree completely with Michelle, and I will say the best proposals generally occur when we start with the industry issue and then work from there. Um, if you are finding yourself trying to fit your research into a proposal and it's just awkward, chances are the reviewers are going to see that and notice that as well. So if you have to spend too much time trying to figure out how to shoehorn what you're doing into one of the priorities, it's probably not a good fit. Keep in mind, but as much as we talk about industry, keep in mind that they're also getting reviewed by researchers, and so it has to be sound in terms of the research. It has to address an industry issue, but the science part of it, the techniques part of it, the objectives, all have to lead to good, solid science as well. So keep in mind that this is different sometimes from some other programs where it's mainly going to be the research objectives being looked at. In this case, it's research and industry will be looking at it.
So yeah, that's a great point. How do you guys have any tips for how to ensure that your research is relevant, or any advice for connecting with growers or other stakeholders, just to make sure that the research project is on track?
I'll go ahead and start on this one. Listen, 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 and listen. When you're out, I think we're so ingrained as, you know, with extension and with teaching, we want to help, we want to give suggestions, we want to give ideas, we want to solve problems. Sometimes what we can do the best is just listen and record and make notes. And then later on, that'll all come together. And many times we can get some great ideas after just listening to the growers for a while.
Yeah, I would say very similar. Every opportunity you have to interact with growers when you're presenting information on the research you're doing, if there's ways that you can tweak that and move towards other interests of growers and other industry stakeholders, that's really important. And I would also advise that they would reach out to you, Laura, as the research coordinator for AFE, if they have a question about whether they think that their proposal topic would be well received by the industry and by AFE, and to discuss those proposal ideas with you, and move forward from there.
Yep, absolutely. And one question I frequently get a lot is, do you know who I could reach out to talk to about my research? And so, if any of you watching this video need help with any of that, I'm happy to connect you with some people to talk to. So we've talked a little about, relevance to the industry, also being scientifically sound. One of our constraints that we have for our proposal applications is that the project description needs to be within 3 pages. So, do you guys have any tips on how you can convey industry relevance as well as all of those technical details within 3 pages and make it compelling?
Uh, I'll go ahead and
Yeah,
start on that.
we'll take turns.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, that is definitely a challenge and something that even having submitted these many times, it's a struggle. And I think the best advice is start really strong with your justification and building the need for the work and how it fits the needs of the industry and or a gap in knowledge or something that's really going to be important. And then the next part is the challenge of describing what can be a very detailed project plan in a short period of time or a short space. And that's where you have to provide just enough detail, but not too much, where you're not writing something that's highly technical, that you make sure that you have enough detail to show the reviewers, the scientific reviewers, that you really do know what are the best methods for the project and that you have the knowledge to do them, but that you also write it in such a way that it's understandable to the audience that might be an industry-based audience also reviewing it that may not have the scientific background. And so keeping it a little bit shorter, spending a little more time on the justification for the selection of specific methods rather than the very detail of those methods, citing things that you've done in the past instead of providing those details. Those are ways to keep it a little bit tighter within those pages limits.
I will add, I think for the first part, in particular, mentally put yourself in mind of writing a trade journal article as opposed to a research publication. I think when I've written a proposal, sometimes I will start with text from a paper or from a student's thesis, and it almost always makes it harder for me to get in the right mind when I have a clean page and I start with thinking like I'm going to write a trade journal article here. And so the first part of it, I think, flows for me a little easier. Then I try to switch over to writing the scientific paper when we get to the methods, some of the techniques and things like that, where we want to be again scientifically sound, but use figures, use photos. I've started doing that more. I think I should do that more still. The old cliche, picture's worth 1,000 words, can really. Plus, let's face it, the reviewers got all these they've got all these proposals to look at, and something that's visually a little more exciting is just going to help them get through those proposals. So I guess think about it in terms of writing a trade journal article to start with, and use pictures, figures, graphs, that sort of thing to make your point, liven things up a bit.
That's really great advice. We've actually added, starting this year, an image requirement for our continued funding reports as well as our final project reports, just because those images just do such a better job sometimes of telling the story than just text. Okay, so switching gears a little bit here, do you guys have any advice for budget considerations? So, what should researchers be thinking when they're putting their numbers together? Are there things you've learned to always include? And then going along with that, any advice in terms of the university's grants office or sponsored research office and how they play a role in your proposal development as well as your kind of timeline when you're putting things together.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with that one. In terms of what's in the budget, I will say that AFE tends to gravitate towards graduate students, partly because that's not only doing the research, but then that's helping to train the next generation.
Mhm.
So the proposal does two different things in the AFE's mind, if that's what they're thinking. So, if you have a project and it's appropriate for a grad student, I would write the grad student in there. It's a little harder sell for a postdoc, partly because of the cost, or writing a technician in, or even writing your own salary. So I would say focus on the graduate students if that's appropriate for the project. Overhead and indirects are not allowed. That's in terms of Laura mentioned the grants and contracts office. If you're a new faculty person, you're going to want to have a discussion. Every university handles that a little differently. Our university really doesn't do anything too much different with those types of proposals, but some universities do handle proposals that do not allow overhead or indirect a little differently. You want to be ready to do that. I would say in terms of working with the grants and contracts office, give them time to do their stuff. The best proposals I've done are ones where I've at least did initial draft well ahead and then put it aside and thought about it, and then added to it, and then thought about it, added to it, and then one day sat down and really finished the writing. If you can have a document open, just as you think about the proposal, you will add stuff to it, and that'll make a stronger proposal. Trying to do it, this is not, chemistry anymore. We're studying, and late until midnight is going to get you a better grade. So start ahead, and then give the grants and contracts office enough time to do their work. If they have the time to do it, they're going to, one, be able to give you more suggestions and be able to make that budget better. And two, they're just going to be more receptive to your future proposals as well.
All right, well, that covered a lot of it. I don't have a lot else to add, but I do want to just say that I agree 100% that American Floral Endowment, for all the reasons that Dr. Dole mentioned, is a great way to fund graduate students. And it's a great way to get them integrated into what AFE is doing, and have them be part of the proposal, and then encouraging them to write technical articles and participate in bulletins and things with American Floral Endowment. So it's a win-win to try to have a graduate student funded on there. It can be a challenge within the budget to get a full graduate student stipend as well as tuition in the budget. So sometimes you have to be creative, go to your department or other entities within the university to see if you can get some tuition match or some tuition waivers, or there's ways to try to do that. Some universities are actually not allowing investigators to accept awards that don't have indirect. Luckily, Ohio State is not one of them, and North Carolina State is apparently not one of them. But before you go through the process, ask that question and make sure that you know what you need to do for a project of this nature. And definitely start as early as you can getting into the system. It's an online application now, so get into the system, sign up, make sure you have all the pieces you need to start that, including what you need for the budget, so you can communicate that to your sponsored programs or research office.
Yeah, those are all great points. A couple things I want to add in there for our online research proposals. Those are nice because you can kind of save them and come back as you go. And our programs manager, Candace Musgrove, will send you reminders if you have not submitted your proposal. So she does a great job of taking care of all the applicants. Our usual budget range is always, at least so far, has always been under $100,000 per year. I would say on average, probably about 40 to 60, although some projects are less, some may be a little bit more. So keep that in mind. And if you have any questions about the overhead costs, you can always feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to talk to you. Okay, so wrapping this up, is there anything else that you think is important for applicants to know that we haven't covered today?
I'll start with one thing. Make sure you define the problem well. Is it, let's say the issue is profitability of poinsettias, just pulling a crop out of the air, for example. What exactly is the issue with poinsettias? A lot of times growers will say, it's the length of the crop time, and that very well could be. But spend some time really defining what the issue is. Many times, if the problem is well defined, then what you do about the problem often is fairly clear. So I would spend some time really thinking about defining that issue and making sure ultimately that your project is going to address that issue.
Yeah, I just want to say, one other reminder, we kind of touched on this before, but you have a general idea, obviously, of, what goes into a proposal, giving some background, giving preliminary data, but pay special attention to what American Floral Endowment is asking for within the proposal, because there is a page limit. It's a short amount of space, so you need to make sure you hit all those things very precisely and very concisely. And also, they specifically ask you to describe the impact of your research to the industry. And I think that that's a critical section. So don't kind of gloss over that. Spend a lot of time and make sure that's really strong, and that then everything else that you put in your proposal really feeds off of that, justifies and builds upon it. It's really important part of it.
So lastly, what is your number one top tip you would give a researcher who has never applied before?
I will just start by saying that if you haven't had the opportunity to interact with American Floral Endowment, you're not really sure if your research fits into the priorities, and you have had good discussions with the industry, that my top tip would be to reach out to you, Laura, as the coordinator for AFE, and establish that relationship, and talk to you about what their research is and how it fits in with the priorities and the goals.
Yeah, that's great advice. One of our newly funded researchers for this past cycle who hasn't received funding before did a really great job of reaching out to me, reaching out to some people that I recommended she talk to, and really making sure that her proposal was strong and that she, knew the right questions to ask, came back to me and made sure everything was good to go. So, yeah, that was just a great indicator of not only her desire to, generate results that are good for the industry, but also work well with the endowment.
Yeah, I agree completely. That'd probably be my number one tip as well. I would say, in addition to that, um, spend some time talking to industry folks. If you're new, if you grew up in floriculture, you know the lingo, you know the terms, you know the issues. It'll certainly help. But if you're kind of new to the area, I think just talking with the growers and the other folks in the industry gives you a feel for not only what the issues are, of course, but just how to phrase it and put it in a way that other growers are going to relate to and understand. Every field has its own lingo, its own terminology, its own way of looking at things. And so if you're new to this field, you want to kind of get some comfort with how we look at things, what's the terminology we use, and so forth. So I would say that I know we've got researchers looking at floriculture now who's coming in from various directions, and we're glad to have you. But that would be my tip for you all.
That's a really great tip. And if anybody watching this has any questions about the industry too, that's another thing that I'm happy to answer, or happy to direct you to some other folks who can help answer your questions. We are absolutely here to help you and here to talk with you. So, Dr. Jones and Dr. Dole, thank you so much for being here today to answer these questions. Just a quick reminder about some key dates for those of you viewing. Research proposals are due August 1st each year. Proposals are reviewed for industry relevance by our AFE Research Committee as well as our industry reviewers, and those reviews determine which projects will move forward for academic peer review. If your project is selected for peer review, you will be notified about that by October. Final funding decisions are made by our research committee in January of the following year, and if your project is selected for funding, that funding will begin on July 1st of the following year. And as I said before, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all. And we are looking forward to receiving your proposals. Thank you.